great to see everyone here. It is not all that often that you get to spend some time meeting the board. We're going to get to do that today. I'm very excited to welcome several of our board members for the AlmaLinux Foundation. Benny, please come on up. Please welcome Benny. So you've already got to see Benny today, but for those of you who don't know, she is the director of the board of the AlmaLinux Foundation. And yeah, it's fantastic to have you, Benny. Next up, we have Simon. Simon has been involved, please, yes, you sit there. I'm going to sit over here. Simon's been involved with open source for 25 years now, most notably leading the open source initiative, where he is now director of public policy. He is a specialist in community governance and has been helping the AlmaLinux Foundation get started. So please welcome Simon. Next up, we have Alex, who is a systems engineer and self-described penguin wrangler and cloud watcher. He has 18 years of experience in Linux engineering. He currently leads 2 teams at CERN that provide AlmaLinux to CERN users. So, Alex, it's fantastic to have you. Last but not least, we have Jesse, who has 20 years now of experience in the hosting industry. Most of his time has been at cPanel, now WebPros, and where he leads as a Chief Experience Officer. So thank you guys for being here today. So Benny, my first question is for you. I want to give everyone a chance to just get to know you guys a little bit first.
Yeah.
You have a long background in community management.
I sure do.
You, especially in the world of software development specifically, right? And that requires a really unique set of skills and experience and perhaps like a willingness to endure all sorts of things.
That's true.
To stay in it. How did you get involved in community work to begin with?
So really early on, the skill, there were 2 skills that I had that made me attractive for community work when it wasn't community work. Nobody knew what it was. I got started in tech because I needed a job, like most of us, right? And I was really good at explaining what I did to people who didn't understand tech. And as soon as it comes out that you have a skill where you can explain technology to people who don't understand technology, you get like pushed into this space where you can engage with people that you have to explain technical things to on a regular basis. So it was very early on I was at Liquid Web at the time, where I was helping create the title at the time was Evangelist. That tells you how long ago it was.
Yes.
We don't like that title anymore, but the goal of that position was to engage with our users. And there was a very commercial aspect to it. It was, we need to make our users feel a connection to the brand so that they want to stick around. But that part felt icky. So I just got more and more into open source and got closer and closer to a community of users that I didn't have to sell to.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you, Benny.
Yeah.
So Simon, one of the things I enjoyed in doing my research is that you're still blogging.
Yes.
Maybe not all that often, but at least a couple of times a year, I'm seeing. And you're very clearly passionate about open source. You've been in the open source space for a long time. Where did that start for you?
That started a long way back. I used to work for IBM, and I helped to start the Java Technology Center at IBM in 1995. And I was very struck by the power of giving people source code and letting them solve their own problems rather than always intermediating their problems and trying to charge them money for doing what they could probably do themselves. Java didn't quite hit the mark because Sun was protecting itself from some predatory industry players. So when I saw real open source at the beginning of the 2000s, I was very inspired to see how it empowered people to set their own destiny with technology. And it meant that you couldn't put a controlling party in the way of somebody's livelihood or somebody's interests, because there was always the right to fork, there was always the right to have the full corresponding code to what you were working with. And so that has really been what has driven me for, for longer than 25 years, because I started working on open source when I was hired by Sun Microsystems to run their open source program office. And while I was there, we got Java and Unix open source. But before that, it was very clear that open source was the little piece of missing magic from Java that was stopping it from becoming truly successful. It came too late, unfortunately, and open source Java was unfortunately more compromised. So that and action at a distance are the two things that fascinate me. Being able to do something here that makes something happen over there, and being able to do it myself rather than having to pay somebody else to make it possible.
I love that. That's fantastic. Thank you, Simon. So Alex, CERN, of course, has been pushing the edges of particle physics, and you've been there for like 18 years now, like a long time in this space. Why does an organization like CERN care about AlmaLinux?
So for CERN, at CERN, we care about several things. The most important thing is running the particle accelerator that we have, making sure that it's stable, that it provides data. We have roughly 17,000 partners worldwide.
Wow.
That use this data for their physics analysis and so on. So for us, keeping that machine running stably is paramount. So the machine, the LHC runs for 4 years at a time, and then it's down for 3 years while we do upgrades. So for those 4 years, and part of those 3 years, we can't do any upgrades on critical systems that are controlling the accelerator or the cryogenics or anything like this. So for that, we need an operating system that is very stable and has a long lifetime. So this is one of the reasons why AlmaLinux is very interesting for us. Another one, which also ties into another one of CERN's missions, is collaboration, especially international collaboration. So CERN was founded in 1954, right after World War II, and it was in part to bring nations together. So for us, collaborating across borders is super, super important. And open source really ties into that quite a lot. Also ties a bit into the managing our own infrastructure and keeping it running for a really long time. So we have very long time horizons at CERN. So we're now planning the accelerator that will start up only in 50 years' time.
Wow.
So yeah, we have to be very forward-looking, and that's why we want to partner with open source companies that we can make sure that they're going to be around for the long haul and are going to give us the stability that we need.
So our theme this year is Uniting the Nations of Cloud. And I think I love how this day has evolved to kind of kick it off. And it sounds like you guys are a good example of kind of putting that into practice. You recognize you need all these different parts and pieces to make it work.
It's impossible to run an accelerator, a lab of that size, without a lot of countries working together.
That's amazing. Jesse, so WebPros, of course, runs on all sorts of operating systems. You have a big picture across the web. Why does WebPros care about AlmaLinux?
Yeah, I think there's two of our core products, Plesk and cPanel, to talk about when we're talking about operating systems. Plesk has always had an approach of supporting many different operating systems, but CentOS was the primary distribution on that side of things, so that's why it makes sense that we wanted to continue to work with RHEL-based distributions. And then on the cPanel side, since 2013, when we moved away from FreeBSD, went all RPM based. It was 100% driven by CentOS. There was no other operating system supported. So it was actually the day of the announcement, Igor actually reached out to me and wanted to know what our plans were to solve for this, because we had less than a year to think about this, and the hosting industry really relies on long-term support. They don't want to update continuously. So Igor brought up this idea even before AlmaLinux was even the name of it, and we instantly knew we wanted to help support this. We've had a long-term partnership with Cloud Linux for many years. We knew that they had the capabilities to do it, and so it was really important for us to figure out a solution. And honestly, it took less than a day to support AlmaLinux and both Plesk and cPanel. Obviously, we have to go through QA and things like that, but the mere fact that we were able to do something like that in less than a day was pretty impressive. And so that's one of the reasons why we wanted to be a big contributor of AlmaLinux, and we'll continue to do so in the foreseeable future.
So in about 20 minutes or so, we'll open it up for questions. We'd love for you guys to begin thinking of any questions you have for any of the board members here. So while you're doing that, I've got a couple of questions for you guys to start with. One of the things that we'd like to hear from each of you, and I'll start with you, Benny, is what do you see as AlmaLinux's role in the enterprise Linux ecosystem? Like, what role do you see it playing?
So there's a lot of reasons that a free version of Red Hat should exist. There are a lot of reasons that the balance is needed, I think, to really test the commitment to open source for Red Hat. But I think most importantly is we support, the people that use AlmaLinux are people who need a strong, stable operating system. And for me, like I said earlier, CentOS was my first love. And having an operating system that is a successor to that, that allows the people who need it to continue to use it and to be engaged in a real way, to me, that's the role that we play.
Simon, for you, you have this long background in open source. A lot of things that you could work on in the world of open source, and you're dedicating time to the AlmaLinux project. How do you think about the role that it plays in the Linux ecosystem?
Well, the thing about it that you learn about open source is that everybody is different. It's very easy when you work in a company or on a single project to believe that everyone uses the code the way that you do, to believe that everyone in your community uses the same code the same way that you do. And when you look at even at this segment of the Linux community, you discover that not everybody uses RHEL the way that Red Hat thinks you ought to use RHEL.
Yep.
And of necessity, they have to have a pricing scheme, they have to make some money to pay all those engineers. But there are still places where you need software freedom. It isn't the word free that matters, it isn't about not paying, it's about having the liberty to, for example, only, we went to CERN last winter. They were closed that month because they're cleaning the mice out of the accelerator. And they can only put patches in once a year, and they can only upgrade the operating system every 4 years. And that doesn't fit comfortably in Red Hat's upgrade cycle. It doesn't fit comfortably in their licensing plan. They need something where they have all the freedoms that they should have from the open source licenses. And so I see AlmaLinux as guaranteeing that the software freedom, the freedom to use, improve, share, and monetize software without having to ask permission from anybody, that software freedom is always available on the most important Linux. And that's the reason I find it so important and so fascinating.
Alex, what about you? From your perspective, you're volunteering time outside of what you're doing to be a part of AlmaLinux. What role do you see AlmaLinux playing in the ecosystem?
So I totally agree with the two previous descriptions. So mine, I'm going to have to go with a common platform for a lot of different use cases.
Yeah.
So for us, we have, like I mentioned, we have lots of physics labs around the world that we collaborate with. It is very useful for us to have a frictionless base operating system that everybody can use, because it really helps us collaborate much better with not only the high energy physics labs, but also all sorts of other research institutes.
Yep.
So this is why I think it's very important for something like AlmaLinux to exist, so that everybody has a common base that they can build from.
I like that. And Jesse, what about from your perspective? What role do you want to see and expect to see AlmaLinux play in the broader ecosystem as you think about like what matters to WebPros as an organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think I obviously echo the same sentiments as them, but even the recurring theme from some of the other people talking earlier with, stability, compatibility, things like this are all recurring themes across what everyone's kind of talking about. And it's interesting to see a less myopic view from, just the hosting industry in general, and the wider usage of AlmaLinux in general is pretty impressive, and I think I learn new things every day on why people rely on this stability and compatibility, and I think that's generally the recurring theme. as well as security. You know, I mean, a lot of people want a secure operating system and making sure that, you know, there's quick response to any type of exploits that come out there for any type of RPM that's being shipped. So in general, I think that's what I'd have to say about that.
So AlmaLinux is only a few years old as an organization, so relatively new. One of the things I'd love to hear from each of you, and I'll start with you again, Benny, is what to you does success look like? I think for everyone in here taking an interest in AlmaLinux, it's important to hear and understand how your board is thinking about the project. So what does success to you look like for AlmaLinux as an organization?
The thing that I hyper-focus on is that we are serving the needs of our community. So if somebody needs something, they need something from us, they need us to do something, or they're just looking to us to be the stable, secure operating system that they need, that's what we're doing. There are lots of things that could distract us, lots of ideas, lots of, well, do you want to do an immutable system? Do you want to do, like, there's all kinds of ideas that we could incorporate. But if that takes away from our core focus, which is delivering the operating system that our users need, then I say no. So I keep us focused on that, and to me, that's what success looks like, is we are serving the needs of our community.
Awesome. Simon, what about you? You've seen a lot of open source projects over the years. You've seen a lot of different things. As you look at AlmaLinux as an organization, what does success look like to you? What do you want to see in it?
From my perspective, success is to do with how the community endures its longevity.
Okay.
So Benny wrote it on the bags that are at the door for you to take away. It says on the bag, no drama, just Linux.
Nice.
You know, that's right at the heart of our governance design, is to make sure that we're a community of people that are representing the users, that are serving the users, and are able to absorb and make change when it's necessary. So, for example, when Red Hat changed availability of the packages recently, there was a lot of fuss in the media. There were a lot of people screaming and creating drama. And meanwhile, at AlmaLinux, the group of engineers making AlmaLinux just got on with making it available. Put together the solution you saw from Andrew earlier. There wasn't a lot of fuss about that. It just happened. And to me, that was a sign of success. And if that keeps on happening beyond when I'm on the board, which has to stop soon, surely.
You can never leave.
Yeah. If that can carry on when we're not on the board anymore, that will, for me, be the mark of success.
Cool.
That the lack of drama carries on.
Thank you.
Awesome. Alex, what about from your perspective? What does success look like?
So for mine, success would be talking with engineers about Alma 11. So something that is way out there right now, but seeing that the community has managed to keep it going, and that we can just focus on Linux and just get something running and have a stable operating system for long term, that for me is success.
Cool. Awesome. Jesse, how about yourself?
Yeah, I think it's, you know, the kind of echoing what Benny had said, you know, it's like solving problems, you know, like I think it's interesting to hear all of the different problems that AlmaLinux is solving for different use cases that you would never think of. And I think continuing to do that with, you know, pivotal things like Elevate and other tooling that we push out there, you know, to support people to do things easy, solve problems, things like that in general. Us continuing to do that as a community without the board, kind of self-functioning, I think is the real key to success for the organization, I think.
Awesome. So open source has a lot of benefits. There's also a lot of challenges to doing things in an open source ecosystem. One of the things I'd love to hear from each of you now, and I'll start with you again, Benny, is... I'll start with Jesse. Okay, we'll just swap it around. Yeah, let's mix it up. So Jesse, what are the concerns, if any, that you have for the future of this organization, the project?
Yeah, I think, you know, some of the headwinds that I would think are more so tailwinds now is kind of what, you know, RHEL was doing in terms of being able to access their sources and things like that. And I think it's still a concern of ours to pay attention to. You know, we found a lot of intricate ways to more or less circumvent or find different ways that are allowed in that way. So I think, you know, those are kind of the primary concerns that I would see us to continue to find new ways to do that. And our approach to go, you know, being binary compatible instead of, you know, a clone itself, I think is a real show of how we can actually endorse something like that and kind of protect ourselves in the future.
Alex, what about from your perspective? When CERN looks at its choices, like what concerns do you feel for the future?
So most of the concerns that we have are related to other external pressures.
Yep.
With AlmaLinux, we have fewer concerns. If anything, it would be something around maybe making sure that there's less dependency on certain key people that are part of the organization. So making sure that there are more people that can participate, more people that can build releases and that can get everything going, so that it doesn't depend just on a few people. So just making the operating system autonomous, essentially.
Cool.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Simon, what about you?
Well, I want to first of all pick up on what Alex said there. A lot of people in the audience here, one of the key things about open source is contribution and community.
Yep.
And you're all community. So please, if you contribute anything to AlmaLinux, if you host a mirror or if you could host a mirror, if you are helping with the packaging, please become a member. Because one of my concerns is that our supply of new blood into the board of directors will dry up and the organization will be left without a strong leadership that is committed to there being no drama. I think the other thing that I'm very sensitive to is without overstating it, we have a reasonably good relationship with Red Hat.
Yeah.
And
Reasonably good. I like that.
so we have a reasonably good relationship with Red Hat, and that has allowed us to have a quiet life.
Yeah.
And I'm always very concerned about a change of leadership at Red Hat, or us inadvertently doing something which is they find challenging, which would make that worse. And so I think both Benny and I are quite focused on maintaining that comfortable relationship with Red Hat, neither being too servile, while at the same time not being antagonistic either. We don't want either of those things.
Benny, what about from your perspective?
So there's two primary things that I'm going to say keep me up at night, but these days I sleep just fine. In an open source world, unfortunately, we have all seen this, open source projects cannot exist without money. And it is always finding new funding, finding the new companies that are willing to put money behind a project that they can get for free. Finding ways to convince them to contribute either in cash or in hardware or in like people that can participate in the project is really hard, because everyone has a bottom line. Everybody has like, oh, we're not just sitting on pounds of cash, so we don't really want to hand it over. So that's the thing I think. I mean, we're obviously doing fine. If you look at that back wall, we've got 25, 26 sponsors, something like that. And the engagement right now is very, very high, specifically because there has been drama and everybody wants to come back us. And so I think about 10, 15 years from now, like you were saying, if we end up in a situation that's like CentOS, where there's only 4 people that are regularly engaging, there's only 1 person that's doing the packaging, you're going to end up in a spot where your project dies. So it is a really important thing for me to both bring in new contributors and new sponsors and new people who are actively engaging right now, and know that everybody has time sometimes and not all the time. And if you can engage right now, I know it doesn't mean you can engage next week, but where you can engage and how you can engage means that we survive long term.
So in a couple more minutes, we'll open it up for questions. So continue to think about the questions that you've got for any of them here. What I'd love to switch to now is, as you think about the audience here and folks watching after and just the community that cares about this project, what would you like to see more of from the community? What are you looking for? And let's start with just this audience in particular. What would you like to see more of? I'll start with you, Benny.
I would like to see every one of you, if you use AlmaLinux right now, go to the website, click on the button, join the foundation. Individual membership for the foundation is free intentionally. Like he said, we want people who care about the future of AlmaLinux to have a voice in the future of AlmaLinux. And the only way you get to do that is by being a member of the foundation. You don't have to do anything. You just have to be a user or a contributor of some kind.
And, well, so that not have to do anything is interesting. But let's say if someone becomes a member, what is something you expect of them as members?
Vote.
Okay.
Yep.
Like, it is so important for me. We have about 400 members now.
Yep.
But you still, like, your voice matters when the number is that small. So if you are a member and we have an election, we've had 2 already, it's super important for me, even if even if, like with our last election, we've only got 2 people to fill 2 slots, it's still, I want to see you engage there because that tells me that you still care.
Yep.
Excellent. Simon, what
And,
about
and,
you?
It's like
you
you're
know,
the best one.
we normally swap things around here,
Yeah.
so I normally say that. So I'll have to say, you know, you can't have too many mirror operators.
Okay.
It's true.
You've all got access to great big hosting servers. Have you ever considered hosting a mirror of AlmaLinux?
It's super easy.
It's very easy, and it entitles you to become a full member of the foundation once you're doing it. And that way you can both vote and you can contribute without having to give us any money. If you are running a company that depends on AlmaLinux, we would be extremely grateful of your contributions of money. It seems dirty to have to say it, but
It's always hard.
but normally Benny has to say it. I will say it for her. We do need some donations so that it isn't all the same people who are
Yeah.
always paying for what goes on. You don't have to pay forever. You don't have to pay a huge amount every time, just the first time. But if you do contribute, you become one of that cloud of wonderful organizations that you can see on the back wall that is keeping us afloat here, that is paying for our infrastructure, that is paying for us to be at events like this. Benny would like you to become a member, and I want that too. But I also would very much encourage you to see what you can contribute to us, because it can be in kind or it can be in cash. We're happy with both.
Very flexible.
Alex, from your perspective and the interest that CERN takes in AlmaLinux, what would you like to see more of from this audience?
Mostly users, I think. I
Yeah.
think, so we all know open source projects generally have a lot of users and fewer contributors. So
Yep.
let's ramp up the number of users, and maybe that will help the equation. So we want more users, more vocal users. Tell everybody that you use AlmaLinux. Don't let only the Arch Linux people be the annoying ones. So just use it and tell everybody about it.
Cool. And Jesse, how about from your perspective? What would you like to see from the audience?
Yeah, I think I'm going to strongly encourage, like, obviously what Benny said in terms of becoming a member, but more importantly, like, with the looming end-of-life dates on CentOS and stuff, use Elevate, test it, give us feedback, things like that. You know, it's super important that we
Yes.
get a better understanding of how this operates in different use cases and contribute to that, because I think Elevate's going to be huge for the forward momentum of future versions of AlmaLinux.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to start to turn towards audience questions. So if any of you have a question that you'd like to ask, raise your hand. We've got someone over here with microphones. We can get to you. It'll be fantastic. I'm going to start with a question. So
Yeah, the audience. I asked for questions ahead of time, so.
Nice. I come from this personal question. I come from the WordPress world.
Oh, sweet, yeah.
Yep. And we couldn't do what we do in the WordPress world without the work that happens at the operating system level, right? And I'm curious, how do you, when you guys think about the work that you're doing, how, if at all, do you think about how projects like the WordPress project and other open source are affected or impacted by it?
So I think about it in the same way that we have talked about it all day, right? We are here to support everybody that wants to use AlmaLinux in however they want to. So if you're using WordPress on AlmaLinux, it is incredibly important that your operating system is secure.
Yep.
It's patched, it's up to date, it's stable. Your kernel's not going to be a problem. The WordPress world has long, for me, been an example of an extremely active open source community that is global and is very exciting to watch. It is, yeah, it's just, I'll leave it there. I'll let everybody else have a chance to talk too.
Simon, I'm curious for your thoughts.
So honestly, I I feel that you shouldn't have to worry about what operating system is underneath you. You should just be able to package for it and know that it works. And I think that's really the frame for my view about the relationship between AlmaLinux and other things. I want there to be lots of things that are packaged. I want there to be lots of things where people prefer to run on AlmaLinux because they know that it's going to be less drama. But ultimately, I don't think you should have to care what operating system you run on. And I think that's what we're working to do, it's curious really, I want to work myself out of a job on the board. And
I've got that vibe a couple of times.
Yeah. And we want to make AlmaLinux work so well that you don't care that you're running on it, but that you would care a lot if you weren't running on it.
I like that. You don't care if you are, but you would if you weren't. Do we have a first question? Anyone want to jump in? I've got.
I thought there was some. I got.
This is a rare opportunity. We have one up on the front here.
I'll get you the microphone over here.
Yeah, this is a fantastic opportunity to be asking folks. Please, just say your name and then the question, and if it's for any particular of the board members.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Lars, and thanks for the fantastic discussion so far. Actually, you mentioned the relationship to Red Hat. I was just wondering, how is the relationship actually to Red Hat, and how, because you said you are kind of scared how it evolves. So maybe you can elaborate a little bit on it.
So we've all been around the open source and Red Hat ecosystem for a very long time. So on a personal level, we all have friends that work at Red Hat. We all know people that work at Red Hat. The professional, like if we talk about an official relationship between AlmaLinux and Red Hat, there isn't one. But we wouldn't exist without Red Hat, right? Right now, we don't exist without Red Hat doing what they do. So our job, from my perspective, is to continue to be no drama. I am convinced still, I know that there are exceptions here and there, but I'm still convinced that anybody that's coming to use AlmaLinux was never going to pay Red Hat in the first place. If you want that relationship, you're not coming to me instead. That's not a thing. So I think that's
A good
I hope that
compliment.
answers your question.
It's a good compliment, the dynamics. Awesome.
Thank you.
Any other, next questions, please.
Hello, my name is Maysam. Thanks for every information you provided. Everybody says that you should be a member, but do you have a solution for membership which doesn't involve Google?
Oh.
Because you
yes.
are pushing everybody to the Google.
Yeah. So the thing that he's referencing, we use Google Forms to take applications. You can email me or email membership@almalinux.org, and we will send you just a PDF version of the membership form, and you send it in, and we handle it that way.
Okay, also for the mirrors, what are the requirements? So, for example, how much storage, how much bandwidth you expect the mirrors to have, that type of stuff?
I don't know any of that off the top of my head, but it is all laid out on the wiki. If you go
It's in the
to,
wiki, not, okay.
yep, just wiki.almalinux.org. It's all laid out there, and there's a whole process. If you go to mirrors.almalinux.org, you'll see all of the current mirrors, and there's a link to both how you can set one up and how you become a mirror sponsor.
Yep.
Thank you.
But we'll make it clearer that we need to make sure there's a good link to not using the Google form.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
I'll add that to the membership
So thank you
page.
for the
Thanks
reminder.
for calling that out.
Becoming a mirror sponsor, by the way, is very easy. It's how I started.
Next, who else has a question? Up here in the front, please.
Hey, from Alma Source Consulting here. Thank you to all of you for speaking in this panel, and I appreciate the values that you are funding and founding AlmaLinux on. So it's sort of like a comment and a question related to the vision of AlmaLinux, because what I've realized is that longevity requires self-sustenance, and to be dependent on full sponsorship, it is stressful and it is also unreliable. So what is the ambition of AlmaLinux? Although it's non-profit, does it only see Linux as the way forward? Maybe it can, the profit that it might get and find revenue streams, like to invest it in other cool projects that Because we know technology is progressing super fast, so we don't know how it's going to look in a few years.
Yeah, I think that
Yeah, well, so AlmaLinux is a public charity, so we don't have any beneficial owners. So if we were to make any money beyond our operating costs, the only thing we can do with that is reinvest it back into the success of the AlmaLinux Operating System Foundation. So it's a good question. We've done a little bit of that with Elevate already, which is the creation of the foundation. Broadly, we're covered by a mission statement which is about the operating system. And so if we are going to reinvest in what we're doing, it will be focused on that area. It will not be about creating a profit for any sponsor. It will not be about expanding into an adjacent technology area, because that would be beyond our mission. So I think that we will stay very focused on the operating system. On some of the discussions we've been having recently have been about how do we make sure that older hardware remains supported, because a common reason people use open source is because they're running a particle accelerator that is using equipment that can only be changed once every 20 years. Yeah. And they're very effective when their RAID card is no longer supported. Yeah. So we've been looking at work we can do in that sort of direction. We've been looking at work we can do about getting resolution for CVEs early before upstream has decided they're important, which has already happened a couple of times. So yes, we're interested in reinvesting within our focused mission area, but we're not very likely to go to any adjacent areas, and we're absolutely not set for creating a profit for any of those companies named at the back. They give us their money because they know we need to exist, not because they're going to make a profit off of our success.
And the whole point of setting up the nonprofit is to avoid profit motivations. I don't want to end up in a situation where we have to go after profit, because that's going to end up antithetical to our open source values. There are many open source companies that produce open source products and turn a profit, but that's not something that we want to focus on at all.
Awesome. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Next questions.
Sweet.
While I was thinking about further questions, I wanted to ask one. So you mentioned that it is a nonprofit. Why 501? I assume a 501.
So it's a 501c6.
And why that versus like a B Corp or any?
Well, keep in mind that a B Corp is a structure, is an ordinary for-profit company that has decided that it's going to spend its surplus in a way that is responsible to the environment and the community. So a B Corp is a for-profit company. It may be a nice for-profit company, but it's still a for-profit company.
Yep.
It may not be extracting a profit at the moment, but it still has beneficial owners. So we decided that that would be the wrong thing to be in this sector, because there's a long history of open source projects in database and in operating systems unexpectedly becoming companies. And we don't want to leave that option open. We can't unexpectedly become a company.
It's a constraint that you've sort of built into it.
And we're a C6 because to become a C3 in US charity law, we would have to have a high level of public support. And that's why we want members, is because we actually want to be a 501c3. But we can't become a 501c3 until the contribution we're getting from individual members exceeds the contribution that's coming from corporate sponsors. And we intend to switch to a C3 as soon as our membership is large enough to make that possible. So we're a C6 at the moment, but that isn't our end goal. Our end goal is to become a C3. Which, again, if you're not into American company law, we want to become a public charity rather than a public trade association, which is the structure we're using at the moment.
That makes sense. Last call for questions. Anyone else have a question for any of the board members here? Please, a couple more up at the front.
Hello, my name is Markus Kirkmeister from Germany. We are a local hosting company.
Awesome.
We used CentOS before. We used AlmaLinux afterwards. And then our production department got shocked because of Red Hat, had Red Hat's decision, so we were a little bit in trouble. What we are doing now with on the shared service we are using that's FreeBSD, and that's it at the moment. So it's a little bit of open discussion. So what I want to know from you. You are based in Florida, right, with the organization?
I think we're incorporated in Delaware.
Yeah,
Delaware,
so incorporated in Delaware. The office is in Florida because of where someone lives.
So,
Yeah.
But we don't have any offices anywhere, so we're,
No.
we're actually
We're global.
100% remote organization.
so it's basically a U.S. Operated organization.
I'm in the
let's say?
U.S. Jesse's in the U.S. These two are not. We've got people who are active on a regular basis from Azerbaijan and Moldova and all over the place. I could come up with a list if my brain were working, but
So finally, my question.
Yeah.
Maybe you have heard about an idea in the European Union of a tax idea taxing open source usage. So you, as an organization, would get money from providers like us to fund your operations or fund your development.
Not really.
So what is your idea about it? So would it be then
I mean, that
maybe a
sounds
motivation to
amazing
go?
to me.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a motivation to go to the European Union or so with
Yes.
your organization.
This is when I turn to Simon, and
Yeah.
this is why he can never leave.
I see.
So I've heard that proposal. I don't see it moving through the European institutions at the moment. There is a problematic idea in the European institutions to make everything European. And that breaks open source, because in an open source community, nobody has a country they're affiliated with.
Yeah.
There aren't any, or not any is a strong phrase. There are very few major open source projects that are associated with any particular country. And so that all the discussion there has been in the European Union about only funding Europeans or only funding European projects, I regard as actually a very dangerous idea. But I do very much want to see funding for open source emerging. My preference is some sort of approach that has cascading funding. So there's something in the standards world called Stand ICT, which is cascading funding. And cascading funding is a popular idea in the European institutions at the moment. I think that the idea of having it as national tax revenue would be likely to lead to it being ring-fenced just for Germany, or ring-fenced just for the European Union member states. And as soon as you do that, you then have to ask, well, what about the projects that are based in Norway? What about the projects that are based in the UK? And those projects are very much European projects. They have a lot of European contributors. Can their European contributors get money? Is that allowed? As soon as you ask these questions, you then begin to discover that it's a very difficult space to go into. So personally, I favor funding the software rather than the institution.
Yep.
And so I spend all of my time in Brussels at the moment talking about these things. And I believe that what should happen is the European institutions should fund the software they use and not worry about whether the funding is going to a developer in France or in Iran or in the United States. Because it doesn't matter, because open source is completely blind to your nationality, your race, your religion, anything other than the functionality of the code, and it needs to be funded on that basis as well.
I love that. Awesome. Well, if there's no other questions,
Down the front
last
here.
call. Oh, we do. Awesome. We have another question up front. We still have a couple more minutes.
While he's getting to the question, I do have one thing I wanted to say that I forgot to say in the beginning. This is only half our board, because this is the people that could get here. We have another half of our board that is based wherever, all over the place, that couldn't make it today. We've got Yun from Japan. We've got, I can't even remember all the people right now.
Moshe.
Moshe
I'm
from
sure it's on the
US.
website.
It is, in fact, on our website. But the most important thing to me is that this is not the entirety of the leadership team. So if you have questions that are directly related to any of the other people, we're all open and all willing to answer any questions that have come up.
That's awesome. Thank you. Please, go ahead.
Sorry.
No,
so
yeah.
Mine was not a question, it's more a consideration.
Yeah.
Since it seems to me that the states and the government, European Union, the global organization, for the time that we are foreseeing ahead, they will try to give this kind of fund, try to link the software to the state or the union or whatever. What do you see? Based on your experience, what you can see? It seems to me that they want more control, obviously, because the world is polarizing a bit, so everybody wants a chunk of software, AI, whatever.
So the question is, am I seeing the European Union or states wanting control of software? There are people who want to do that, but most of what I'm seeing is about recognizing that open source software is now part of 99% of all software.
Yeah.
That the market for open source software is generating the consumption side gross national product in the trillions of euros. When you are that scale of activity, you start getting regulated. It was inevitable that software was going to face liability. And so you all now are subject to the Cyber Resilience Act, that if you haven't looked at it, you probably should look at it. And you'll be wanting to make sure the operating system you use can be CE marked in about 2 years' time when it comes into force. There is regulation coming to do with the Interoperable Europe Act is going to make it a requirement that national governments have software that's interoperable for citizens across borders. The Data Act is creating new liabilities and responsibilities. The AI Act has just been ratified and is a very early piece of legislation to protect citizens from software. Now, when you look into all of those, they look like they're a control grab, but I don't believe they are. I believe it's legislators realizing that they have forgotten to regulate, well, basically you. And they're now getting around to doing that. And I very much recommend that you take an interest, because there is going to be, the legislation we've seen this year is just the thin end of a wedge. There are another 9, 10 pieces of legislation just on the train for the next 3 years. And there's a new European Commission coming this year, new European Parliament coming this year. There's new Commission activities happening. We're going to see so much more, and you need to make sure that you're paying attention and that you're supporting organizations who can speak for you, such as OSI, where I work, Free Software Foundation Europe, Appel, which is the trade association for open source in Europe. All of those organizations can represent you, but you've got to want to be represented. And so I don't think it's actually about a power grab. I think it's about saying that citizens need to be protected from rogue devices, unmaintained firmware, operating systems and cloud hosting that has not applied CVEs. And you've now got to protect consumers from unpacked operating systems. How about that?
I'm curious, how many of you in the audience are already members of the AlmaLinux organizations? By a show of hands.
0, 1.
Okay, awesome. We got a couple.
Oh, yeah. If
Clap for that.
I think there were 2 or 3. Come see me. I have a pin for you. Actually, you're wearing it.
I have this. I'm modeling the member pin.
Foundation member pin.
Yeah. I think one of the things we'd love to see then is a lot more membership, right?
Yeah.
Like this is something, I think oftentimes, especially in the world of open source, it's easy, someone else will do it. Like, well, no, you guys are the ones, clearly by your presence, that have an active interest in this, so let's sign up, become a member.
There's I don't remember his name now, but there was a speaker at an event in the US who said, open source is not a spectator sport.
Yeah.
It is, nobody is going to be involved if you're not involved.
Yeah.
It's got to be you.
So I think if we do this again next year, we'd expect to see at least half the audience
Yeah.
members.
Well, so open source is a relay race.
Yeah.
I like
Not
that.
everyone has
Absolutely.
to be
That's a
good
not
metaphor.
everyone has to be running all the time.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just a foot at a time. and
But
pass it
everyone's
on.
got to be willing to run some of the time.
Yeah.
I think one other thing to point out, too, to
Please.
reiterate what Benny had said earlier or asked for earlier is tell us how you're using AlmaLinux Day or how you plan to use it, because then we can kind of maybe publicize it and others who want to use it like you're using it today, like
Even
let
if
us
you're
know.
Tell the stories.
Yeah.
Even if you're just
wanna hear
taking
it.
a picture of the BART system that was very clearly running AlmaLinux 9 when it crashed, like, that kind of stuff just makes me happy.
Any last questions for the board here? Up right there at the front, please.
Thank you very much for interesting discussion, interesting panel. My name is Elia, and the question is, because you already returned to the topic about engaging users to be members of foundation to contribute more. Do you already have some kind of strategy, some kind of vision, some kind of concrete programs, how you will engage the user?
Good question.
How we'll get foundation members, is that what the question was?
No, what they'll do when they arrive.
Not only foundation members, how you engage the user to contribute
Yeah.
to the project.
So that's one of the hardest things, right? Because I don't want to, as the person that's going to be reaching out, I try to balance asking people to do anything, knowing how important their time is, and also how to ask. So when I say just come contribute, what do you do? Where do you want to join? How do you want to engage? It is one of the hardest questions to answer. So to answer your question directly, no, we don't have a plan. If you want to come help me with it, I'd love to have you.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's important to point out too that you emphasize the voting piece, right? Like
Yeah.
the first step is to accurately represent people who sort of care about it, right? So by being a member, you vote and you're indicating to the board, to people making decisions, where should they focus their efforts. That's an important first contribution, and that contribution could then very well lead to, hey, this thing actually matters to me. Maybe I could get involved in this initiative.
Yeah, I would actually turn the question around. What's important to you that you think is not being done and needs to be worked on?
Yeah.
That's where you can contribute.
Yeah, even if it's just, this is one of my favorite questions to ask when I was doing community management for software companies. Where does it hurt? Tell me how I can help there. Because even if it's just something very small or it's something like, Alex came with a request, 6 months ago, something like that, where he needed something patched or something changed. And he asked and we said yes. And I guess it was 2 years ago now. And then he got engaged. And so even if it's just, this is where it hurts, this is what I need, come ask us. We'll help however we can.
Yes. But the other thing to say is that we do have, we have a Mattermost system. It's on IRC. Along the theme of open source being a relay race and not a sprint, it's good to just hang out on the IRC and see what's going on, because that's where you'll suddenly realize that you do have an itch that needs scratching, or there may be an idea that catches your interest and that you can contribute to. So please come join the IRC channel, or one of there's a number of Mattermost groups if you come to the chat site.
Yeah.
And join in
Bridged all
there.
over the place.
And then be a member and vote, because the thing that actually keeps us going is having new directors to replace us when we, I'm getting old. I'm getting old. My hair's getting grey. I'm going to have to go soon. I need someone to replace me on the board.
You're on speed dial. It's fine.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you guys each for being here, for taking the interest in AlmaLinux, and thanks to each of you for putting your time into this outside and today. And if any of you have questions for them afterwards, you can catch them. And thank you guys.
Thank you.